Adventure Ho Illumineers, and welcome back to another episode of Ducktail Dads. My name is Ryan, and tonight I am joined by both of the other Ducktail Dads. Mack and Nathaniel are here with us tonight. Nathaniel woke up from his long slumber from last week and is here with us to talk about all of the card reveals for Wilds Unknown, as well as our set championships experiences. We have a lot to talk about, so let's dive in, fellas. What's new in your world, Nathaniel? Update the people since it's been a hot minute.
Yeah, so I have to apologize to you guys again. I think most parents have probably been there where they have fallen asleep during bedtime, and that was me last week on recording night. I actually woke up to, as some people know, my wife was on vacation. I was solo dad for a week, and I woke up to her returning from her trip in the middle of the night. So that was quite the surprise. I thought I was podcasting, and so did she, and I ultimately was not. So you guys held down the fort great. I love the episode from last week. Obviously, so much excitement around Wilds. I'm super excited to talk about some of those cards. Some of the cards that have been revealed since last week as well. So from a personal life perspective, nice to have the co-parenting balance back in the last week. And we did actually celebrate my younger's turning a birthday. So that was super fun. Got to go out to eat with them and see them kind of get excited about a birthday. That's always fun. From a Lorcana perspective, I did play finally in my first set champs, which feels insane to say given that just a few days we're at the final weekend of this set. So that was super fun to finally get back out there. Plan to share on that in a moment. But before I do that, I'll pass it over to Mack.
This has been a busy week in my household. Another edition of what's going on in my bathroom is kind of what happened this past weekend. And this past weekend was all about grouting all of our shower tile and anything to do with the shower floor. Man, it was exhausting. My body definitely felt it. I no longer recover the way I used to about 10 years ago. But on the bright side, after photos, this is truly the moment where like my wife and I are like, this is why we're doing this. The bathroom is coming together. We're on the home stretch. We're so close. We just have countertops to put in, which are in a couple of days, and then just kind of tidying up loose ends, which feels really good to see the light at the end of the tunnel. In addition to that, though, on the other day this past weekend, we celebrated our final Easter celebration. I know it's a couple of weeks removed now, but that's what our family tries to do. We plan like a week or two away from the main holiday. That way we get out of the main chaos that tends to come with holiday planning. So that went successful, but we hosted. So not only did we host a holiday, then the next day we turn around and just continued on the bathroom. So very, very busy. So moving into Lorcana, because of that, there was like no play for me. The only play that I had was online when my kids were falling asleep at night. So just some online testing. I've just been enjoying a Blue Steel Allies list, the second list that I had been practicing before I ultimately took Amber Sapphire to my first and only set champs for this set. And I've just been having a lot of fun playing around with that list. It's when you hit the right cards in that moment, that deck list is very satisfying. So it's been fun doing that. And then just like you folks, like we've been enjoying the reveal season. I'd say we're probably 60 or 70% of the cards have been released up to this point, the night we're recording. So very excited to see what's around the corner from the first iteration of Pixar, and then planning not only for set 12 but and beyond, because you can tell, at least I feel it, right? This is definitely the springboard and the leapfrog into what season 3 is going to be about. Everything Pixar, or at least, and it's exciting to see the vision. And there are a lot of similar cards, but done in unique ways that we haven't seen quite yet with other sets, and that's what's got me excited for Wilds Unknown for sure. That's a little bit about what's going on in my world, and I'll pass it back to you, Ryan. What about you?
So new for me on a personal front, we now have a 1-year-old. We officially have a 1-year-old in the house. We're working on all the big milestones surrounding 1 years old. So we're starting to take some steps, which is great. We're starting to talk, or not talk, but like babble and make noises that seem like something to them, but nothing to us yet. And then on a Lorcana, and then we're obviously going to have some more festivities coming in this next weekend. We had a grandma come up for a long time to help us out, give us an extra pair of hands. Yeah, it was a blast. It was a blast hanging out and having a good time and just spending some family time. I was able to get out for a set champs last weekend as well, so that was fun to play in another competitive event, and got top 4. I think I finished 5th. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Otherwise, after that set champs, was the major Lorcana update, and then just playing online, enjoying some of the alternative game modes this game has to offer, because I'm not going to make it to a set champs this weekend. It's not really like grinding any experience or anything or matchups on any particular deck at the moment. So mostly just here to help out if y'all need anything. If you want any help testing anything, happy to help out in that regard. But otherwise, just my set champ season is wrapped up, and I'm happy with it and content with my performance. Obviously, there's always a part of me that wants to get a play mat every set, and sometimes we don't get there, and we'll take top cuts, because that is the baseline goal is making it to a top cut and getting those shiny cards. That's always fun to go out and just play, and then have success is always the cherry on top. So let's talk set champs then, fellas, as a first point of content. So I went out to a set champs this weekend on Saturday. I believe, Nathaniel, you made it out to one on Sunday. Is that correct? Great. So my set champs on Saturday was at kind of my local store, the closest one to my house, which was nice to have that short little commute. Always a lovely store. They actually just recently expanded the store, so kudos to them for growing their business. And so they have a little bit extra space. It feels a little bit more open and less like merchandise is staring right down at you as you're playing, and more like you can kind of breathe in the space and just enjoy it. It was a beautiful day. It was a great company to have for the weekend, or for the event. I unfortunately saw the worst, I think probably the worst matchup in the room in the singular deck of that worst matchup. I was playing I was playing Amethyst Sapphire, and the matchup that I got was Amber Amethyst in the first round, and it was the player that I was matched into was a skilled player. And so obviously was playing the matchup well, and I made a couple of blunders and missed ramp in one game. In 2 games, actually, I ended up missing ramp because I walked into a turn 2 Mowgli to discard my Sail the Azurite Sea. So that was unfortunate. Took a couple turns off and tried to make a game out of it. Ultimately was not able to pull out the match victory, the game victory or the match victory in either of those games. So that was kind of a disappointment to start 0-1, but then battled back to 3-1 and just bubbled out a top cut. There was one singular scenario where if one result goes differently in round 4, then I actually end up bubbling in to top 4 tiebreakers. So there was still, I did everything I could, got the wins I needed to, won the matchups that I was paired into after that, and just barely missed the top cut in our local set champs. That's the way it goes sometimes. Obviously, we've talked about it before, but you need some luck in order to win a set championships. So you need some luck to get into top cut to make sure you're seeing the cards you need to see in the matchups you need to see them in. But it was nonetheless a fun time. Got to connect with people, got to meet some new people, reconnect with the old people that I've seen multiple times before, and just be able to hang out. Spice Lord Lance made it up for the event. Another guest of the podcast, Ernie, was also in attendance at the event, and then a handful of other locals and Minnesota players were out in full force and playing some high quality Lorcana, which is always that's the best part of set championships in my mind, is just being around people that are enjoying the same thing you're enjoying at a similarly high level, and every game's competitive, and you get to meet new people along the way, and it's a blast.
What was the deck spread like in the room, and do you remember or recall what ultimately ended up taking first place in your set champs?
Yeah, so like we talked about last week, Mack, the deck spread was still pretty wide. It wasn't quite 9 for 9, but it was pretty wide. There was, I think, a couple of repeats, maybe just 2 or 3. There was at least 2 Amethyst Sapphires. There was at least 1 Amber Steel, Amber Amethyst for 1, Emerald Sapphire for 1. There was 2 or 3 Sapphire Steel decks. One of my opponents, I played one of the opponents that I had was a Sapphire Steel, and they actually set up this really interesting combination of cards with playing like Vincenzo and a Scuttle, and then also dropping a Lady Cluck bodyguard in front of all of that, which is, somewhat terrifying for a Blurple list to see this giant warded bodyguard in front of high questers behind it. And so that's challenging to face down, but ultimately navigated that to a win. What else was there? I can't remember any of the other decks that were at the event. I think because I saw multiple Sapphire Steels and Amber Amethyst in my Swiss rounds, and then the top cut was Amethyst Steel. So obviously there was Amethyst Steel there. Emerald Sapphire, Amber Steel, and Amethyst Sapphire were the top 4 for our small set champs. Amber Steel ultimately came away with the victory. They navigated Amethyst Sapphire in the top 4, and then Emerald Sapphire in the finals to come away with a victory, which was entertaining Lorcana to watch. Honestly, they were playing very high level games, and obviously they saw the cards they needed to see in that Amber Steel deck with Akud and Strength and Thunderbolt and Willow, and like all these cards that can kind of cheat and cheat out characters. Is very explosive and can have some very like high roll lines, and maybe they saw those, and they also were just playing very well, very high level decision making happening. So Amber Steel ultimately won the set championship, and it was pretty well spread out. There's probably 7 or 8 different ink combinations represented in the 13 players that were in attendance, and then there was actually 2 more players that showed up just a little bit too late because of a clerical error online, and they were bringing 2 more different decks in Amber Emerald and Amber Ruby, so it would have been even more diverse and widespread at that point too. So great to see the diverse meta out there still. 2 consecutive weeks for me attending set championships, seeing all these different decks and not having an overwhelming amount of any one ink color combination. And also to see another different ink color combination win a playmat with Amber Steel. Last weekend was Sapphire Steel, this weekend was Amber Steel, so I guess the key to winning is just playing Steel, and I need to pick up Steel sometime soon.
Nathaniel, what about your set champs? How was yours? Because you were able to attend one, right?
I was. So my set champs actually ended up only with 11 people. So I think one thing to probably note here is it does feel at times like the numbers are sagging a little bit at some of these set champs, right? I think it depends on a lot of different factors. If there's other card events happening, how far into the set champs, how many other locations have events that day. There's plenty of factors why there wouldn't be as many attendees. But that being said, 11 people, so not super huge. I just was jotting down as Ryan was talking through the deck diversity of his set champs. There were at least 9 different ink combinations at mine. So almost every person was running a different ink color. There was dogs, there was Amber Ruby Boosty Boys, there was Amber Steel, Ruby Sapphire, Ruby Amethyst, Blue Green. The top 4 was Blurple, Amber Sapphire, and Amethyst Emerald Burn. So that was really interesting to see that deck, because I think that had some steam last set, and I feel like it kind of went away thanks to dogs being so good, right? Like it just gets board wiped so fast before they can really do all the things that they're trying to do. And they're also, like, the Chronicon would be feeding the dogs player cards too, so that's not the best thing ever. So that was surprising to see. That deck actually did really well. They got in top 4. It ended up shaking out. So I was on Blurple, and I realized that I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, and I think this upcoming weekend I really want to not do that, and so like just take a totally different approach to it. And I think part of this is just like being a competitive person and the expectations that you sometimes put for yourself, whether they be too high or just based on recent results. So thinking back to kind of how the end of last set went into early this set, like, yeah, I have been winning a fair amount, and yeah, that feels really good, right? But it's not always going to be that way, right? And so I think having had a lot of success at the Frosty 500 earlier this set, I felt like Blurple was in a really good spot. I was going to run that again. It's really strong. And I just felt like I had a lot of pressure to perform. Like I have to get to the final. Like I've been doing this, right? Like I expect to do this. Like I want to show that like I can punch at the highest weight class, right? Like in our area. And as Ryan mentioned, right? Like you're going to run into matchups that aren't the best for you. You're going to run into really good players, and sometimes you lose. And I'm proud of the performance because in that top 4, I actually was matched up to everyone in that top 4. So I beat the other Blurple player when I played them, who ended up actually winning the tournament. I beat the blue-yellow player, the amber sapphire player, when I played him in Swiss. And then the burn list, we matched up. We didn't technically play because we were both 3-0 at the time. But basically, like I was listed in Swiss against the other 3 people that made top 4. So that was kind of cool to think like, okay, hey, like I was able to perform against good players. It did feel a little bit bad when I stayed to watch the final, but I had beaten both of those players in Swiss 2-0. But then when I played the amber sapphire player in Top Cut, man, he was drawing so many cards and laying so many big bombs down that like I couldn't find the removal when I needed, and all of a sudden he had a really big board with a lot of really interesting things. And this will sort of lead into a future conversation, I think, about what we're seeing with what Amber's doing. But Amber is starting to become an ink color that can draw a ton of cards. So I couldn't just like out resource him, I think, and that was weird as a Blurple player when I was looking over at times and his deck was shorter stack than mine, right? Like he's drawn more cards than me, and I'm the Blurple player, and I'm playing plenty of draw cards, right? Like I'm a fairly stock list here, and I'm not that creative. So I think that was really interesting. But ultimately, I did make a top cut, so that's cool. I still got the promo card, the Tink, which, by the way, wow, it looks so good. And even the participation one, like having some foiling at the base of the card, I thought that was an amazing touch. So again, I probably sound like late to the party here, right? Because many people have seen these cards for the last 2 weeks, but like actually seeing it in person, I was really impressed. And it was kind of cool because I got a few of the participation ones because they just kind of distributed most of what they got to the 11 players. So I got 3 of them. So that's super neat. I have a playset of that card now. From One Set Champs, the foil one and the non-foil, so that's kind of neat. But the foil card does look absolutely stunning. I think they totally knocked it out of the park with that as far as like the artwork, how the card pops. Like that's exactly how I feel like a Set Champs promo card should look and feel. Kudos to them. But yeah, it was really interesting. I'm going to mix it up this final weekend, play something that I really, really like. Not that I dislike Blurple. I definitely understood why Ryan likes it so much, having played it more this set than I have in the past. It has an incredible power level. I think most people would probably say that right now the primary decks that seem to be doing really well are Dogs, Blurple, and then probably some combination of like Purple Steel and or Blue-Green for the people who are really good with like Blue-Green. And one thing that I felt like is that Blurple just always seems to have some sort of answer. There's always some sort of out. Do I sing Second Star to the Right and draw a million cards to find that answer? Do I already have the answer in my hand because I have a Let It Go and an Into the Unknown to answer their big things? An Elsa to force exert their things. Like there's just so many good Amethyst cards. It's unbelievable. I think that deck is kind of busted, but it's really good. One thing I will note that I was very surprised by, and Ryan, I know you had mentioned that you saw this deck, but there was like no Purple Steel. And I feel like that's really strange for the Minnesota meta because historically that's been pretty popular. As a Purple Steel lover myself, a little disappointing not to see it represented as much. But it does feel like folks are opting for other types of decks in lieu of that. So instead of going the Purple Steel route, maybe they're going Amber Steel. Or if they want like a more aggressive list, maybe they're playing something like a Dogs, or which isn't strictly an aggro list, but kind of feels that way sometimes. So I think that's been kind of interesting to see that sort of change because that felt like it was almost always going to be a top 2 or 3 popular list at any Set Champs you went to. Purple Steel. It's so good. But yeah, that was, I think, one of the big surprises that I saw. But it was fun just to get back out and get in the swing of things and play some Lorcana with human beings and not like in front of me versus, having to do it all virtually. So that was really great.
I want to ask a follow-up to this, and I'm going to pivot based on what we had planned a little bit for this episode, right? You made a good point about or a point I should say, about this ultra competitiveness coming out, Nathaniel, and you feeling I don't know if it was the satisfaction of playing just wasn't there this past weekend or whatever. In summary of what you said, can you maybe we'll just have a discussion on why you are feeling that way, and then maybe Ryan, or you chime in too. Do you feel that from time to time more recently as well, and maybe what the cause of that is? Because I can understand that too, but I'd like to go last. But since you brought it up, I want to hear your perspective on why you think that might be coming out.
So I think part of this is there have been other avenues to test more relentlessly, if you will, that have cropped up in the last quarter or so. Call it the last 3 to 4 months. So I think that's definitely contributed to the fact that you can just get a lot more reps in a lot more rapidly, and with that, I think if you have a competitive mindset, it tends to bubble more and more, that I have a larger data set to work off of. I can now look at those results and I can start asking, why is that matchup good? Why is that matchup bad? What am I doing wrong in these situations? You're almost with more information, you can be a better player. But then with that, I think then there's this expectation, if you do have a competitive side, to want to push against that. How do I get that number higher now? And I think for me, when you think about the volume of games to going way up, I have fun with that, but I want to get better. And I think having a continuous improvement mindset too matters there, where you're saying I want to learn from mistakes. But I think at the end of the day, there is sometimes the fact that if you're sitting across the table from someone who's also good at this game and they're making good decisions too, then you might not lose because you made a mistake. Somebody else played really well and they won. So I think I have to remind myself of that. But I also have to take half a step back here too, and remind myself, this isn't a DLC. This isn't the World Championship, where everything's at stake and it's all this pressure, right? At the end of the day, we're just here having fun with cards, right? And I think when you have some degree of success or that's becoming more frequent, then there's a level of expectation to continue doing that. So for example, if I go to 4 consecutive outings, and every single one of those I finish in the top 4 or better, or I win those events. Now, if I go 2-2 and I'm 7th and I I get my promo card, I'm actually not that happy, right? Because of the fact that the bar was set so high. And I think that's a very natural thing. As human beings, we become used to things, and then we expect that to be the norm, or even more out of ourselves after that. And so I think for me, I have to remind myself that Minnesota is a very good community. It's very talented, lots of good players. And I'm not saying that I went into this being I'm going to win the playmat, right? But I think when you've had some consistent results, you grow to expect them. And that, I think for me, is a very dangerous and slippery slope. And I do think there's also an error, a little bit of this coming from the fact that I want to prove myself to the Lorcana community that I can be a consistent player and I can get results. And, I'm a nice and friendly person, but I'm also a good Lorcana player, I'd like to say, or pretty decent. And so I think it's just all those things, I think, combined made me just feel like there was this huge amount of pressure to do really well in every single game. And that's just not, I think that's against the spirit of what Set Champs goes. I think back to the JDZ conversation, right? Where he talked about play fun stuff. It can be kind of competitive. It can be a little sweaty here and there, right? But Set Champs is your local thing. You're with your community. Playing in a more formal setting, that's fine, but have fun with this. And so that is definitely the mindset I'm going to take in the final weekend. I'm going to reset a little bit. And I definitely haven't been stewing or anything like that over the loss. I want to also clarify that I wasn't upset or anything. I feel like I just was able to sort of take a deep breath, and watching the final after I lost in top 4, I was able to sort of be okay, I'm good. I just get to watch some good players play good cards. And that's okay. How about you, Ryan?
I think you hit the nail on the head with the access to more frequent and abundant testing play testing, if you will. it kind of just elevates the like opportunity to excel, really. Like when I went into set champs the last couple of sets, having not really played too much, just a few online game or like webcam games with friends, in order to prepare. It was more of like, okay, we're gonna figure things out along the way, and I'll be able to navigate that just fine. But then this set having the access, really this set is when I hammered it, having the access to like the play testing on a more frequent and abundant basis just made me feel much more prepared and ready. And if the opportunity presented itself where I had good luck to be able to excel and succeed and find success. And so I felt like it was very like an attainable thing, having been so prepared for it and having played so many games and got so many reps in. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it does, like we said before, it does take luck in order to get through and navigate any tournament of any size, from your 8-person set champs up to your 2,000-person DLC. But along the way, you need to be able to maximize on the opportunities you are presented. And so I felt like I was prepared to do that this set compared to the last couple of sets. And then beyond that, just that like growth mindset that, right, of I did it this way once, it didn't work, I'm going to try it differently the next time. Having navigated a lot of those situations through the playtesting that is now readily available, being able to say that like I don't know that there's going to be too many abnormal situations, and I know what is good in many of those abnormal situations that are similar to it, and there's enough experience in those to be able to navigate novel situations as well. The second point that you made was about the just like enjoying good Lorcana and just observing it and being able to appreciate it for what it is. There's a level in my mind of like the competitive side of things, of that when I go into something and I feel like I have an opportunity to succeed and I don't succeed to the like nth degree and I don't get to the mountaintop, there's a wave of disappointment that I navigate, and then moving on and just like enjoying it for what it is and enjoying the experience and just trying to like laugh it off and have fun with it. And obviously along the way, I'm not just this like nose of the grindstone, don't talk to me, don't even look at me kind of thing. It's much more of a cordial, and we're having fun and we're chatting in between games, and then the game starts and we're just going to focus on it, like JDZ had been talking about, of like I'm not making any conversation during the match, but in between games or in between matches, we can like have a laugh and talk about this, that, and the other thing. And I felt like I did that pretty well this last weekend too. Just having that extra perspective to lean on as well, that like that's the connection point, and some people might not be as comfortable just having casual conversation during Lorcana games, especially at the set champs level, and just being able to understand that, and then taking the opportunities when they are available between games or between matches, like when we're shuffling or when we're just watching the other matches finish up, to have those small talk conversations and learn about other people and where they came from and how they got to be across the table from me that day. So I think that there is obviously this level of disappointment that I navigate internally, and I try my best not to let it like show on externally, just because that's not fun for anybody, and I don't want to be seen as a sore loser, especially on the infrequent opportunities for us to get out of the house and actually play with people physically in front of us, which is, want to make the most of those. And so just being able to have a positive attitude even in times of defeat is important, and be able to have jokes and conversations and then move on from any losses or disappointments is important to be able to continue to enjoy the community, enjoy the people that we get to meet, and enjoy the people that we get to continue to see multiple times over and over and over at different events. I think just leaning on the friends and the other people, the acquaintances that are in the room, to be able to have some friendly conversations is also helpful to kind of pull me out of that wave of disappointment from not achieving the goal not achieving every single goal that I had set out to achieve that day. Mack, what are your thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you guys went first, because I'm, in a way, it feels reassuring that my feelings about my performance isn't just feeling alone, right? Because I was only able to make it to one set champs, and unlikely I'll make it to the last weekend, right? And per our conversation last week, I did not do well And we have been actually like, this is the first time in a while I think the three of us have like grinded for a set champ season compared to like what we did for DLC Milwaukee, right? Like I feel like we've done a lot of practice due to the points that there's just more out there to be able to test. And I think just with the stress of like life and parenting, as well as a lot of what's going on offhand, and then with the holiday season, right? Like there aren't many opportunities for us to go out, on a regular basis. But even just for me personally, like that's even tightening even more, right? That opportunity to get out. So when I am able to get out, like to Nathaniel's point, like I want to do well. I want to take advantage of it. I want to be able to earn my worth, right? And I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to do well at that set champs, and it due to the fact, let's just say that I'm lucky there were only 9 people, and I just happen to luck into a foil promo, right? Just based on the lower numbers that showed up, and yeah, it was tough to navigate for 6 hours after the tournament ended. I mean, by the next day, you kind of just move on and life is life, right? But it was just like, man, I actually tested really hard for this and I didn't do well. And one thing I keep thinking back on is we did a lot of this, like what to expect at set champs. But like thinking back on it, it felt like, now in hindsight, it was like what to expect at a DLC. And now that we're in set champs and we've seen the variety of decks, we only talked about the top 4 or 5 really leading up to it. And it's just like, JDZ really does make a good point. Like set champs are supposed to be fun, try new things, get people out there. It's just like a party with your community, and there happens to be prizing on in association with that, right? So my lessons learned from this season is definitely like, okay, especially with Pixar around the corner, it's super exciting to have these new characters in here. Like, let's focus on the fun rather than the ultra competition. And if we happen to make it to a DLC season 3, right, that's when we can focus on the ultra competitive side. Set champ should be a celebration of our local scene for each quarter, right? So yeah, it's been a weird set champs, but I think it's definitely trying to branch out on the ultra competitive and just realizing what it's worth. I think to your other point, Nathaniel, and you mentioned in your recap of set champs, your experience, and the lacking of purple steel. First of all, I think that deck has just changed a lot this set. It moved from a mid-range to a more aggro style focus, and I think our scene specifically is kind of that mid-range to control, so I can see that being a reason why it's fallen out of favor. But I think from a greater 10,000 foot view perspective, it's like the meta has been, the top decks, I'll just say the top 3 decks, have been pretty stagnant for the last 6 months, right? And maybe people are just sick of it, and that's why we've been seeing this variety. And that's a positive thing, right? We want to see variety, but at the same time, it's like, I should know what to expect, and it's still feels bad when you don't do well at it. So I think moving in and transitioning into like some of these reveals now, I think that's what has me excited about a lot of these reveals is like we have new iterations of cards that we've had in the past, but there's still a lot of differences, and we're seeing a lot of like subtext combos with like supers and toys and whatnot. So I don't know if you guys have any closing thoughts on what we're talking about now before we get into some of these reveals that I think for me personally, there's a lot of excitement on that end.
I do have one thing to add to that, Mac. And that was that if anybody else is just having these like feelings of disappointment or anything like that, as they're navigating their set champs season, just know that like everyone feels some level of that, I'm sure, along the way, because no one is going to be successful 100% of the time. And it's like Mac mentioned, set champs are a celebration of the local community. So do your best to like obviously go out and be as competitive as you need to be, as you want to be, as you can be, because that's, set champs is supposed to be kind of the middle ground between very casual play and high competitive DLC play. but at the same time, just know that, like, again, we're going to play the game, we're going to do our best, and then we're going to move on and have a laugh about it. That's like the really, really important thing. And then the point about Amethyst Steel falling off, I think it's kind of just like gotten overtaken by a lot of other decks in the meta, just in terms of just sheer power level. Amethyst Steel has tons of option and tons of great powerful things that it can do. And I didn't realize this, but you made a very good point. The fact that, like, this has been the same, it's relatively the same list for 6 months now. And you actually made a comment when we were at the set champs that you went to, when I was playing on Amethyst Sapphire and I was playing against an Amethyst Steel list, and you looked over from your match and went, "Come on, guys, the same board state for the last 6 months. Aren't we tired of it yet?" I just chuckled to myself. I'm like, yeah, but like these are good cards, so I want to keep playing them. And so as long as everyone's having fun with it, I think it's good. But I think the Amethyst Steel has fallen off the leading edge of the power level a little bit this set. It's still very consistent, obviously, because it draws tons of cards. But I think there's other things like Amber Steel, like Amber Emerald or Amber Amethyst, that, like, you can still play your Amethyst cards or your Steel cards that you like, but just put a little extra power level, a little oomph behind them with some other added options or added ink colors to it. And I think that's kind of why we've seen Amethyst Steel fall off a little bit, is because it's very similar play lines to what it's been forever, is just 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, play a 4 drop, sing Strength of a Raging Fire, and then quest a 20 before your opponent can recover from losing their biggest character on turn 4.
My closing thought on this, Mac, is I had so much fun during Whispers because I went to 4 local events, so 1 weekly and 3 set champs, and every single time I ran a different deck. Now, again, I ran a purple deck every time, but that's neither here nor there. But it was like a different deck every time, and I think because of that, I didn't necessarily have this, like, I've been practicing with this deck for the last month so that I can do well with it. It was like, I'm picking something else up, for next week, and maybe I'll do a couple, practice rounds with you guys, just kind of start to understand what it does well, where it struggles. But like, there wasn't as much expectation because I was constantly changing. And so I think that's where, like, yes, obviously did have some success, but it wasn't necessarily because of that I was having fun. It was because I was trying something different, seeing how a different deck would run. And like, there was some learning along the way too that was kind of exciting in that aspect as well. So I think that's one thing I want to make sure I always stay close enough to, and hopefully always have enough cards to do something like that, where I don't just run the same thing. I'm mixing it up a little bit, and I think there's a lot of freshness and fun to that, and it goes right hand in hand with going to sealed events and going to release events where different cards are getting played. It always feels different and new, some degree of freshness every time, and also why rotation exists, right? Because new cards coming in, old cards going away, it changes everything. And so I think even on a micro level in a specific set champ season, there's some fun in being able to just like mix it up and do something different and not just say, this is the 60, it has to be these 60 every single time. So I'll say that. I think that goes a long way, and I hope that other people have also found that some of the experimentation can be fun. And if you do just like a specific deck and you like playing that a lot too, there's nothing wrong with that. I think for me personally, I'm learning that being able to change a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah. One question for you, Nathaniel. Are you taking up JDZ's challenge of the Tinkerbell challenge for your next set championships this weekend?
I genuinely thought about it because, like, when I saw that I was getting 4 of them, I was like, whoa, I could actually do this now. So I thought about it. We'll see.
That's awesome. Yeah, and to your point, like, Whispers was really fun because that was when I played the Detectives list. So yeah, like, branching out, I think that's what Set Champs is about. And it's great that we have these practice tools, but maybe that's what, as we've talked about multiple times on theme, right? We're all very competitive guys due to our traditional sports upbringing. And sometimes that can get a little bit overboard. So I think sealed events, experimentation where we can, and then we got to get another one of these in-house friend nights to just do something wacky, I think, to just break the mold, and then I think we'll be well on our way. But we do also have Wilds Unknown and Pixar. So what do we want to talk about with this? Because there's a lot going on. Who wants to take the stage? I'm going to sit back and let one of you two go first.
Okay. I'd love to go first.
Okay.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I didn't get to say anything last week, so I just wanted to before you talk about any new cards, I wanted to double down on a couple things that you guys had said last week. The first one in particular, the Dashpar Lava Runner, the Amethyst one, man, that card is so cool. Like a rush character that can quest the turn he's played. That's so awesome. I love that for purple. I totally see this as like a purple steel, like burn type of thing. It's clearly going to be some sort of like a replacement for like a Cobra, right? I think there's a lot of really cool things you can do with this card. His stat line is incredibly like underwhelming, but questing him the turn he's played is really unique, and I think there's some amazing synergy there with things like the Pocahontas. I think Ryan, you'd mentioned that too. So I think there's some really cool things that the set's going to be able to do. And I also think there's some good shift things happening. So shift characters specifically being good. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, we're already on the topic. So what shift characters are catching your eye?
So one in particular is well, of course, there's the Woody card. I think everyone can universally agree that that card is going to be extremely good. And that is actually the talking point that I had made earlier about Amber being this really interesting color, because I think historically when you would play an Amber deck, especially as a purple player, you would just basically say, I'm going to burn you out of your resources. I just have to manage the board enough to prevent you from getting to 20. And then eventually you're going to run out of card draw, right? Unless you top deck dock on dock because you're an Amber Steel player, you're going to eventually slow down on the resources, and then that's where I will then hopefully win the resource battle, and then that's how I'm gonna ultimately be the first one to 20. And I think what we're seeing with Amber now that makes it in some ways like equal parts strong, but also like sometimes frustrating. It like has all these unique ways to draw cards now, right? And the bigger decks are gonna toss down Surfer Stitch and draw 2 cards, or they're going to trap you into an Ohana Means Family and draw 3 or 4 cards off of that. So like that's interesting, but I think some of these like more aggressive leaning options to draw are particularly scary because of the fact that like if these decks are questing a lot fast and early and they are able to draw an extra 3 to 5 cards in those first 5 to 6 turns, that's sometimes all they really need. So that's like why cards like that Nani from this set are really scary, because she gets to dig for not only just a 2 cost, but like potentially can see multiple in that top 4 and pick the best one for the situation. So oftentimes in Amber Steel, you're going to see them, so they're going to select a dock, right? So then they can dump their hand and do it again. So I think that's what we're starting to see with like the Woody card that makes it so good. Is it's like, okay, yeah, you're getting this 1/5 quest for 2 super powerful effect pretty fast in the game, so that's interesting. But the other one that caught my eye is our gal Luisa Madrigal. She is so awesome, and again, it's a purple card, so of course I like it. But that card's awesome. I actually really liked Luisa as a character just in Kanto. So like I thought that was really cool that it was like this, like it was a very cool element to the story that like there was obviously this underlying relationship stuff going on with like Mirabelle and Isabella, but like that the strong sibling was also a female. I think that's very important for like girls to see that too. So that was really neat. And I think her effect is really cool. I think it also falls very much in the Amethyst theme of moving damage. So that's really awesome. And also just being able to get a 6/4 statted character down on turn 3 is insane. So that was the other one that really caught my eye from a shift perspective. And I think it's cool seeing shift characters be good, because guys, stop me if I'm wrong, but were there any meaningful shift characters this set or last set? I feel like there's not.
None that comes to mind that's like was a meta staple. Like you're talking that was released in Winterspell that had both a low cost card and the equivalent shift or adjacent shift that goes with it. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct. Where like a larger shift character came out that was like potentially highly playable. I feel like we haven't seen that since like it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while for sure.
Rockstar Lilo, maybe, I suppose.
That's probably the closest thing we've had.
The closest. Let me double check quick. Pocahontas, the Amber Pocahontas, which saw some play in some aggressive decks to kind of close the game out.
But to your point, Nathaniel, nothing like meta, like what seems to be meta defining, right, with some of these shift options that have been revealed so far.
And who knows? Maybe the Louisa doesn't see any play, but I think you have the one cost coming out this set that is not a bad one cost by any means. I think a 0-3 Challenger 2 is great in a deck that, like, neither Louisa is questing for a lot. Like, this is more of a mid-ranger or control type of card. I think that's fantastic, and you could see some consistency getting out that 5 cost Louisa on turn 3. And I think that could be really cool to start, locking down what I anticipate to be some extremely fast games based on what we're starting to see from Amber with a million 2 and 3 questers that are like cheating out ink left and right. Akuda is going to go absolutely insane this next set. But yeah, I think there's also just some really cool thematic stuff happening. Of course, we've been hyping up Pixar forever, but like seeing the cards now, like the Violet Par, and like seeing like stuff that really resonates with like what I would think the character should have. So the Amethyst one, right? Like she's evasive. She can do some like minor damage movement stuff. Like that feels so on brand with that character from that movie that it's just like, it feels like they're kind of knocking out of the park with some of this stuff, both from like making decent cards, but also they're in line with like what I would think that character, quote unquote, like should be. Sorry, Ryan, I interrupted you.
I think the most impactful shift character from a meta perspective was the Webby Vanderquack from Whispers, being the like ink ramp off your opponent's ink ramp kind of situation. But other than that, it doesn't seem like there's anything major printed in impactful shift characters.
And probably important to note too, right, that Fable didn't have very many new cards, so we're really working with like 2 sets worth of newer cards to even have those types of shift options. There's been 158 cards, spoiled. What do we say that have been not released, but revealed? There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. There have been 158 cards that have been revealed, and I'm really only seeing, 2 potential shift lines. So it's not like they're super popular, but I think it's just a cool element in this game that continues to like be interesting. I guess there's also a Merida that could potentially do interesting things for green decks. And this is the 5 cost. I don't think you guys talked about this last week because I think she's been released since then. It's a 5 cost Emerald, shift 3, 3/6, quest for 2. And while this character is exerted whenever an opposing character challenges, you may deal 1 damage to the challenging character. So this could be really interesting with like if you had like a bodyguard situation out or some ward things going on. I think this could potentially do some interesting things, but it's not that great. And then of course there's the Buzz Lightyear shift. So that could go crazy, but he's also a really high cost uninkable card, so he might not see a ton of play. I don't know.
I want to expand on this because I wrote down some things that I'm really excited about that's happened for the past week. And one of the things that I wrote down was vanilla shifts. And who knows if the ultimately the big shift targets what you're trying to get out, right? Who knows if they're actually going to be good. But what I am actually very appreciative is like we have the smaller shift targets, and I don't care if they're crazy, meta-breaking, with an insane ability. It's just the fact that we just have these vanilla shift options, and sometimes the low 1 cost vanilla shift is all you need. What I mean by vanilla shift, for those of you who don't understand, it's a card without an ability, right? That's a vanilla card. It's plain. And we see that, like, one of the bigger reveals from a week ago was the new Ruby Legendary Mr. Incredible. Well, this past week, we now have a 1 cost inkable 2/2 Mr. Incredible that is a shift target for the big Legendary Mr. Incredible. I think we've seen there is now a shift target. This one isn't vanilla, but there is now a Steel Mrs. Incredible 2 cost card that can be a shift target for the Steel Legendary Mrs. Incredible that has been revealed. They've also filled in the gaps of bigger cards that are out there that don't have a shift target or haven't had a shift target previously, and now they do. The biggest one that I am referring to is now there's a vanilla 1 cost Robin Hood that is blue, and that's a 1/3 stat line. Champion of Sherwood has been out there since Fabled and has been reprinted since Fabled, and I haven't seen it once. And now the Robin Hood Champion of Sherwood has this shift target that I think makes it interesting again and worth testing out to see if blue steel is a viable deck to have this Robin Hood shift. I'm very happy to see shift targets and Ravensburger having shift target prioritization with with these reveals thus far, because before it just felt like it almost felt lucky in the sense that shift was there and it was powerful, but sometimes you weren't using it, and that just felt kind of off-putting, just off balance. I don't know. It felt really weird that would be an option, but not have an option. So I'm happy that there have been an abundance or an increase in just simple shift targets for a lot of these fun cards that people are excited about. So that's my first one. If there are any thoughts there, I can get to another one, or I'll let one of you jump in with another point that you've noticed over the last week of reveals.
I think it's really fun to see specifically like some new potential archetypes coming out. So of course we've talked a lot about the toy thing happening. So whether it be the Ruby stuff with Sid, or the puke out lots of cards with Woody, right? Like the toy thing is becoming another archetype in the game. The super thing I think is starting to become really interesting as well. And dibs on the next franchise night, if they keep releasing supers, that I get the Incredibles. Because there's like some pretty awesome synergies here. And again, it's cool to see good shift cards that have also like synergies with a specific type of like archetype. So the like great point, Mack, about them releasing a shift target for Mr. Incredible, because his ability is amazing. Whenever one of your other super characters challenges another character, draw a card, right? Like Ruby challenging to draw, like that's really impactful. And just having the shift target sitting on the field puts that opponent at like am I safe to quest here? Because if they shift on this, all of a sudden they could be drawing like 3 cards this turn and banishing my guys. So that's sometimes those shift targets just completely change the way a game is played. I think a great example of that we've seen in more recent memory is the injured Mulan shift target for the Mulan Elite Archer, where just having that on the field would basically, you could totally not have the big one in your hand. But just the threat of you having that would like completely stall a board state for like multiple turns until your opponent could get rid of the one cost. And I think, Ryan, we had talked about how funny it would be where like that would be sitting there and they'd like Zeus the one cost Mulan, because that's how scary that shift line could be. I think that's where it's fun when like the game can kind of do that. And it's in some ways like a microcosm of like the Purple Hades from last set, where it's like you put your opponent in the situation of like, do I already have the removal? I just want to draw 2 cards, or am I looking for the removal? Can you afford to lose that guy? Right? Like some of the fun little mind things that can kind of happen. That feels like what shift targets can also introduce. Not only just making the shift the bigger thing, a more viable threat and more feasible thing that you can actually do, but also just the fact that it's sitting there. I think once you've played enough games, you start to know like that's a really powerful thing that they could be setting up. I have to like think about that now. And then completely altering the way the entire game is played from that point on is a really cool thing. Just from a 1-cost vanilla Robin.
I think the other synergy that I like about the shift targets is they're printing 1-cost shift targets, and they're printing characters that shift on them relatively early. So it's not like, for example, Shimmering Sky set 5, there's the Clarabelle, which has a 1-cost shift target, but it doesn't shift on it till shift 5. It's a long time that this 1 cost either has to survive, or you have to delay and play like a little off curve. Play this 1 cost when you're on 4 ink, so when you ink to 5, then you can play the Clarabelle on the shift. But then the shift targets, or the shift characters that they're printing for this set, seems like they're printing them more on the like shift 3 line. So there's the Woody that shifts for 3, there's the Mr. Incredible that shifts for 3, the Luisa shifts for 3, Robin Hood shifts for 3 for that example that you brought up. I think that is really impactful because it feels like you're going to see that many more times just by the way that the games usually play out, and you can tailor your opening 7 cards very, very cleanly in Lorcana, but through the mulligan system or the altar system, and so it's more likely in my mind that you're going to see the shift targets and the shift characters in those first 7 cards than if you were just to draw them naturally throughout the game to be able to play them. And you play out the 1 cost, hoping you find the other one later on, and then you can like you have to tailor your entire hand around it for the Clarabelle, where you're not going to ink the Clarabelle, you're going to keep it in your hand. It's the last thing you have, pretty much. So your entire like game plan is just playing to that Clarabelle. To that point, to utilize a shift target and have it be majorly impactful, it needs to be really impactful on the game, right? You need to draw multiple cards, you need to remove multiple characters, you need to like play things for free. Like it needs to be very impactful because you're investing so much in one spot on the board and not going wide but going tall then in that sense, in terms of like how you're developing your board with the characters you're playing. And so I think that the effects that they're printing on these shift characters are generally impactful enough where even if they don't have the shift target, they're probably going to be played anyways. Like Mr. Incredible being a card draw engine in a supers deck is impactful enough to, if you have to cut the one drop because you have better one cost characters you want to be playing, you're still going to be playing him because once you get to 5 ink, then you can have this draw engine activated very cleanly and your opponent is thinking about it the entire time. Once you get to that point of, oh, if I exert my characters here, am I potentially giving up too much value to my opponent's super characters challenging and drawing cards? Same kind of thing with like David Xanatos, not a shift target from Whispers in the Well, but it's still a 6-cost draw engine on challenging. Same thing with the Queen of Hearts that's been printed previously too when any of your characters challenge draw cards. Genuinely, I think that the Ravensburger team is doing a great job designing these cards, and I think that the shift characters are impactful enough. And then, on top of that, printing songs that can be sung by those shift characters is one of the strongest things that this design team can do, and that the strongest things that you can do in Lorcana is surprise your opponent by singing a song that's higher cost than you have ink value for. So with these shift 3, the characters that shift for 3 ink, then being able to sing 5-cost songs, specifically one that I'm excited about is What More Can I Do, which is I think we covered it last week with the beautiful enchanted artwork, which is a 5-cost uninkable song that you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, and you can put one in your inkwell and put one in your hand, and then all of your characters gain ward, I believe, if that card was sung. So then you're protecting your board from action or strong based removal or character like choosing effects, and you're ramping further, and it's just like progressing the game plan and progressing the game even further, which is just fun for me to think about, of that being kind of a mirror breaker, that being kind of a way to make Ruby Sapphire viable again, maybe having a shift target to be able to sing this to accelerate the game that extra little bit. And then on the next turn, maybe they sing All Is Found. Is All Is Found a song, or is it just an action? I can't remember. Yeah, so you can sing All Is Found the next turn to play multiple cards from your discard then into your inkwell. So just always looking for that ink ramped, and I think Mack might have some words to say about Ruby Sapphire being viable, or just how Sapphire is developing in general, because I think we're inching ever closer to getting back to let's play games until we have 20 ink and I get to control you out. Not necessarily as easy to do in Amber Sapphire, so maybe Ruby Sapphire is going to have the tools this next set to be able to achieve that. All we need to see, Mac, is reprint Sisu, right? That's all we need.
I'm still wishing for the day, but I know it's probably never going to happen unless, who knows, at 13, rotation, good time to introduce a couple good reprints. You never know. But both of you hit 2 other points that were on my list. So the first one was, Nathaniel, you mentioned characteristics or traits of cards, and you specifically pinpointed the supers. Like, that's something I've noticed with this set too. Like, those specific traits of characters seem to matter. I think we saw a tease with it last set with all of the Darkwing and Detective cards, and now we're seeing it here with toys. Not only with Buzz and Woody in Amber Emerald, but toys in Ruby with Sid as well. There's some synergy there. And then the supers in Ruby Amethyst. That seems very exciting. And then, I don't know, there's a lot going. Oh, the stuff that was announced today with Snow White and the 7 Dwarves, there's some synergy there. So I'm seeing a lot more of these characteristic or trait synergy with things like those examples that have been revealed up to this point that we know, with 70% of the cards revealed. I love that. I'm very excited for that. So that was one point that I wanted to check the box off. But the other one was that beautiful, beautiful song, What Else Can I Do, in Sapphire. And branching out, just Sapphire's songs in general that have been revealed makes me personally and selfishly very excited as a Sapphire player. Not only do we have What Else Can I Do, but we have this other song, this 3-cost Inkable, Someone Will Lose His Head. And that is this character. It's an action song, so character 3 or higher can sing this. Each opposing character gets -2 strength this turn. And when I read that, I was like, ooh, speaking of Sisu and Infinity, that seems really good. But just minusing of strength, it reminds me a lot of Sapphire Coil, right? And how that seems to be a prominent trait specifically in Sapphire. It's just another version of that, and specifically it's the song version, and that makes me very excited. With that kind of ability still continuing in that specific ink color. So I wanted to point out that those two songs seem powerful. It might not be powerful right away in core constructed, but something to keep an eye on with Someone Will Lose His Head, as well as the What Else Can I Do Sapphire songs seem awesome. My last point was really artwork. Artwork is amazing and continues to look amazing. I don't know what they changed the foiling a couple sets ago to this. I think this new heat foiling effect, and I think that has been, although there were some initial feedback at first with them, those cards maybe bending a little bit due to that foiling. Regardless on if that continues to happen or not, the foiling makes these cards amazing. The Enchanteds continue to look beautiful and have looked amazing the last couple sets, very much on brand with Whispers and Winterspell. And I'm very excited. Probably won't pull one because my luck has been just absolutely awful when it comes to foiling and Enchanteds, but I hope that I'm with Ryan when he inevitably pulls one himself. So again, foiling and artwork continues to be just chef's kiss when it comes to where Ravensburger is going with the Enchanted artwork.
For what it's worth, I hope you're with me when I pull multiple Enchanteds this set as well, Mac. I think we would both enjoy that a lot.
Thank you. I mean, you're always looking out for me when it comes to you pulling your Enchanted cards.
There's one other archetype that we're seeing a little bit more synergies with that I do want to talk about before we lose the opportunity to talk about it before the set comes out, and that's location synergies. The locations that they're printing are starting to really come together and have a lot more aggressive and higher willpower lines as well. So there's one particular line in general. There's a Fat Cat line in Steel that they're printing where there's a character, Fat Cat, I believe, that gives resist to your locations, which is a bigger body than the launch pad that does the same thing. And then there's also a Fat Cat's Lair, or something along those lines. That's a location that they're printing that I saw today. Let me find that card here quick, which is I believe it's a 6 willpower, 3-cost inkable that has 2 lore on it and no other text, just 3 ink, 6 willpower, 2 lore. But it goes really well with one of the action cards that they're printing, Touch the Sky, which is a song card actually, and you move character of yours to a location for free and then draw cards equal to the location's lore. So play your 2-cost character, play Fat Cat's Club on turn 3, and then sing with your 2-cost character to move to Fat Cat's Club and draw 2 cards for free. Just seems like, obviously you're not getting any bonus from moving the character to that location, but if you have enough other locations that you can move there as well, there's a high enough density of these like high lore locations now where I think this locations deck becomes very highly viable. And things like the John Silver that we've had for the entirety of the game that gains resist and lore based on number of locations you have in play. It synergizes great with this. You could play Elsa in Ruby if you're playing Ruby Steel, and Elsa synergizes very well with locations. There's Get to Safety to bring back locations, and there's a whole bunch of other like random, or not random, but intentional synergies around locations that they've printed in, especially the last 2 sets in general. That I think there's going to be something there in some sort of ink combination that's going to make this worthwhile. And I'm really excited to see how that gets solved. I'll take a crack at it, and I'll see how off base I am when someone actually cracks the code on it. But I am excited to see locations come to the forefront and actually be playable again. The other location that I thought of now, I believe there's a powered down version of McDuck Manor that got printed. I think there's a 4-cost inkable location in Sapphire that has 7 willpower and 2 lore on it. So that can kind of be like the Amber Sapphire win condition replacement for McDuck Manor now, where it's just get to my board wipe, drop multiple locations right after my board wipe and say, I dare you to deal with this. I bet you can't do it, and I'm going to board wipe you again. And I think that is going to be an interesting play line to navigate as well. And we'll bring some other cards and other deck archetypes to the forefront that can deal with those locations efficiently. Here's looking at you, Ruby. You have a 6-cost inkable, 8 strength rush character that's going to deal with every location in the game. So that alone, if locations become big enough, might bring Ruby to the forefront just because that card just because copper exists, and that's the only ink color that can deal with every location that cleanly. And so that's locations is something that I'm very interested to have them wrap back into the core constructed meta with Wilds Unknown, and now Winterspell added a little bit to it, and Wilds Unknown is kind of compounding on top of that. What other thoughts do y'all have about the cards that have been revealed so far? We have 80% of the set out, so what else do we want to talk about?
My last point, selfishly, is Ruby, but this dash that was recently announced. It is kind of the Maui hero to all replacement, with a little bit of a different twist. First of all, it's uninkable, which is kind of unfortunate because all the good Ruby cards that seem to release, everyone's really excited, and then they see the top left corner and there isn't the extra little wispies around the number. So it's another powerful uninkable Ruby card, but this dash, the other main difference is it's not reckless, and it quests for 1. Same stat line as Maui Hero to All, 6/5, and it still has rush, which is great, but the main difference, like I said, is not reckless, and it's able to quest for 1. So after it does its main objective and just removing something instantly, either you have to, most likely at a minimum, 2 cards will have to go into it in order to successfully remove it, and if you can't remove it, at least you'll get a lower out of it. And ironically, Ruby Sapphire, it is 5, so what else can I do? Who knows? Maybe that's a good, that is a good song target, because that was something that Maui Hero to All could get around with its reckless, is that it would always sing How Far I'll Go if it didn't have anything to do, or if it couldn't quest. So maybe that's that new combo. Again, both uninkable, but I think, Nathaniel, you made the point, like in one of our chats, Ravensburger seems to have recognized things that might have been a little overpowered in sets 1 through 4, and they're trying to continue those strong abilities, but giving it, an extra cost, for example, or making it uninkable, and recognizing the power level that once maybe was too strong, and trying to balance it out in other ways with cards that are now releasing with this current set.
That very much seems to be the play. It's basically like, how can we effectively reprint this in a slightly nerfed fashion, whether that be one extra ink cost, it's an action, not an action in a song. Is it, it used to be inkable, now it's uninkable. I think there's this, like, all these very unique ways to print a balanced good card and give us this flavor back again. Where, I think when I first saw, like, at first glance, the what else can I do, right? I thought about that as, like, they added that little bottom line of, like, give all your guys ward to, like, throw us a bone. Like, it's not totally, a worse card, but there are probably situations where that does become actually genuinely, like, really good, where you are getting to ramp, giving, like, to Ryan's point earlier, right? You can, like, there are times where giving all your guys ward is, like, a very good thing. I saw it this weekend when Connor did that to me in our match, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't get at that big Prince Philip because it's warded now thanks to Aurora. That's scary. So, like, there are going to be times where I think that's, like, genuinely really valuable. It's just, I think, seeing it, I have to see it play out a little bit. And again, it just having the extra ink cost does nerf that original card in some way. So, I also think, Ryan, you just mentioned this, limited, definitely some awesome looking cards for that. Some beefy guys that Mack always likes to play in Limited too. There's some monsters coming out, like 7/6 stat lines on 5 or 6, right? Those are crazy.
There's one other specific card that I wanted to call out to, because it does everything Amethyst Steel wants to do in a 2-cost character, but hasn't yet been able to, and everything Amethyst Steel was jealous of that Ruby got. And there's a 2-cost inkable 1/3 quest for 1 Diablo that's coming to Steel. That when there's a villain character on your field, then this Diablo character gains 2 strength and 1 lore, so it becomes a 3/3 2-quester with a villain on field. One of the most popular 1-cost characters that currently is played in Amethyst Steel and will continue to be played because it's a very efficient card is Captain Hook, who happens to be a villain. So your 1-cost character already satisfies the condition for your 2-cost character to be incredibly overpowered. And so I think that Diablo might add a little power back into Amethyst Steel, and really any Steel deck that plays any level of villain characters, to be able to like keep up with the meta and be a relevant deck still. I think that'll be a highly played card. And I'm excited to get my hands on it and see if I can make a Steel deck work. But for some reason, Steel just doesn't work with my brain. I don't know. I like Amethyst and Sapphire and Ruby rather than Steel.
It does. Actually, Ryan, it's interesting you mentioned that card, because looking at it right now, that second piece of text too, where the other villains can't be challenged, there are going to be times where you can freely quest your Captain Hook now, or like your smaller villain, knowing that they have to now get through this early beefcake to get at that. So you can just cheat a couple extra lore, even in games where you're going slower than you probably would have wanted with like a turn 1 hook. So that's really interesting. I'm glad you brought that play line. All right, well, I come back and we easily clear an hour 15. So you love to see it. Gentlemen, it has been a distinct honor and pleasure to once again join you for a podcast instead of falling asleep in my kids' room on the floor. As always, you can find us on Instagram occasionally for social media content. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We post both our audio and our video to our YouTube channel. So if you want to see our faces while we talk through this, you can go there for that. But as always, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and all of you listeners out there. Hope you found this valuable as we kind of talk through cards, trying to describe it as much as we can in as much detail as we can if you can't see all of this, knowing that most of you are audio only listeners. But until next time, let's get the duck out of here.